It took 16 months. This is a building so massive. This was built in the middle of a world war with a deadline that never once moved.
Steel was needed for the war effort elsewhere, so this building had to be built almost entirely out of concrete instead.
How do you actually build the largest office building in the world during a war in just 16 months? Find out together. The only way to actually hit 16 months was to stop building it like one building and start building it like 5 all at once.
Before it becomes a building this size, it starts as nothing more than sand and stone processed steadily by the ton. Every ton of material has to reach this exact site before the clock can even truly start working against them. With steel in such short supply, this ordinary river sand becomes the single most important material on the entire project.
Every single batch has to hold up a building that on paper was never really supposed to lean on concrete this heavily.
Every single ounce of steel that does get used has to go exactly where concrete alone simply will not be enough. Before a single beam is even delivered, we already know exactly which few places actually need it most. This mix has to reach the site while it is still fully workable, since there is simply no time to waste on any delay. The ground itself was not cooperating either, since it was soft, uneven, and never meant to hold something this heavy. Every truck here is carrying material that during wartime could have gone almost anywhere else instead of this site. Toward one of the largest single construction sites the country had ever cleared, and the material keeps arriving truck after truck without pause.
The material has finally arrived, and now it has to become the largest office building anyone has ever attempted, in less time than anyone thought possible.
The only way to actually hit this deadline was never to build one building, but instead to build 5 at the exact same time. Before a single wall goes up, an area large enough for an entire small town has to be cleared all at once. Tens of thousands of piles were driven into ground that was never actually going to hold this weight on its own.
5 separate foundations were poured entirely in parallel, simply because there was never enough time to complete them one after another. In some places, construction actually starts before the drawings for the next section are even completely finished.
The first true wall of the first wing now stands up, while 4 more wings are already racing hard to catch up to it. Every joint here has to hold on the first try, since there is no time built in for going back and fixing mistakes later. This site never actually goes dark, since when one shift ends, the next one is already walking in to replace it.
That for the first time you can see the entire strategy laid out from above, with 5 wings rising together entirely on purpose.
Wall by wall, the material that was never supposed to be the main structure becomes exactly that across the entire project. Every section that comes out clean means one less delay in a schedule that simply has no room left for any delays. Even the hallways here are part of the strategy designed so no one inside would ever need to walk very far to reach anywhere else. This is exactly the kind of spot the original steel allocation plan was carefully built around from the very beginning.
By keeping every single wing on almost exactly the same schedule, and no single piece ever has to wait on the others to catch up.
For the first time, you can see exactly what this building is actually going to look like once fully finished. At the very center of all 5 wings, an open space large enough to hold thousands of people steadily takes shape.
There is no time to wait and see if a section actually works, since it gets tested immediately the moment it is finished.
Even starting later, this particular wing is still expected to finish almost exactly on schedule alongside all the others.
While 4 other wings are still just bare frames, and this particular wing already has a roof of its own. Behind the concrete shell, an entirely ordinary office building starts quietly taking shape within it. For the first time, every single piece of this ambitious plan is finally moving forward, all at once.
More than once, the building itself actually changes shape while it is still being built, since there is no time to stop and start over completely. They simply adjust and keep moving forward, since stopping was genuinely never actually an option available to them.
Halfway through, this is already one of the largest active construction sites most workers here have ever personally seen.
The schedule never actually asked whether the weather itself agreed with it or not.
When the weather refused to cooperate, they simply built directly around it instead of waiting it out.
For the first time, someone could actually walk continuously between two wings that started out as completely separate construction sites entirely.
Aún medio terminado, ya no se parece a nada más que se esté construyendo en todo el país.
Every single inch of this record-breaking pace still passes through very ordinary and very human hands.
Even with a deadline, this genuinely unforgiving safety checks are never the thing they decide to skip along the way.
Behind the concrete shell, thousands of individual offices are being finished, all at the exact same accelerated pace as everything else on site. Some of the very first people to actually work here move in before the rest of the building is even fully finished. The very last piece of the plan finally starts catching up to everything already built before it across the site. This is one of the very last pieces of steel, going exactly where the original allocation plan always said it should go. With that moment, 5 separate construction projects finally become one single unified building at last. From right here, it feels almost impossible to believe all of this happened within the same span of time most projects spend just finishing their paperwork. Even the very last exterior details get finished with the exact same care as the very first ones ever installed.
This is an entire network of hallways so long that some people who work here will never actually walk the whole thing in a single day.
The very last office was finished with exactly the same urgency as the very first one had been so long before.
Before it is ever declared finished, the entire building gets checked wing by wing one final time without exception. Even now, the smallest detail is never rushed, no matter how far along the overall project has already come. One by one, the very machines that built this in record time now finally leave it behind for good. The site that once roared around the clock now falls completely quiet, while what remains behind will outlast every single deadline that built it.
After all of this, which includes concrete, rationed steel, and 16 months without a single missed shift, the structure now stands fully complete.
Even getting to and from a building this size needed its own genuinely separate construction effort entirely. Even the grounds outside get finished with exactly the same attention as everything built inside the structure. A building this large needs its own reliable way for people on opposite sides of it to actually talk to each other quickly. Every utility here now runs continuously across 5 wings that started out as 5 entirely separate construction sites. This small plate marks a building that fundamentally redefined how quickly something this large could actually be built. Before it is ever declared finished, and the entire building is checked wing by wing one final time without exception. For the first time, the people this entire building was built to house actually start working steadily inside it. Within its very first year, and tens of thousands of people are already working here every single day without exception. Within its very first year, and tens of thousands of people are already working here every single day without exception. Every single light has now been checked and confirmed working exactly as originally designed across all 5 wings at once.
This is one last walk through something they built faster than almost anyone thought possible, before it finally belonged to everyone else.
16 months after it started, and everything is now finished, and everyone is already working inside it. Every calculation, every wing, and every carefully rationed beam of steel has now been approved one final time, without exception. Every calculation, every wing, and every carefully rationed beam of steel has now been approved one final time without exception. From here on, this building becomes exactly what it was built to be, which is a single coordinated headquarters instead of dozens of scattered separate offices.
Most people come here to see the size, while almost none of them leave without also talking about the 16 months it actually took.
Within years, what once seemed like an impossible deadline simply becomes just another part of how this building has always worked.
This is one building with one deadline nobody thought was actually realistic, and a schedule that never once moved throughout the entire process.
For the rest of the war, this building becomes exactly the kind of centralized headquarters it was rushed into existence to be.
Every single day, tens of thousands of people move through corridors that simply did not exist 18 months earlier.
It was built to hold offices, yet it ended up holding almost an entire small city's worth of daily life inside.
Decades later, the exact places they chose to spend their limited steel are still holding up exactly as originally planned. What started as an urgent wartime solution became something people would instantly recognize anywhere in the entire world.
Most of them still cannot quite believe the whole thing went up in under a year and a half from start to finish.
Some of the people who built this in 16 months spent the rest of their lives telling people it actually happened that fast.
Decades later, the building rushed into existence during a war is still doing exactly the job it was originally built for.
This is one building with 16 months and a record for speed that decades later still has not been matched at this scale. Every sunrise now rises over a building that by every reasonable estimate should have taken years longer to actually exist.
This is not just concrete and rationed steel, but rather what happens when a deadline simply is not allowed to be the reason something does not get built.
It took 16 months and 5 wings to meet one deadline in the middle of a war.
This video is created for education and informational purposes using advanced AI tools and human creativity. All concepts, scripting, and storytelling are independently developed to ensure originality. Visuals and animations are generated or enhanced using AI technologies such as VO3, Meta AI, and Grok AI, while final editing and post-production and completed using CapCut and other professional editing tools. No external created content has been copied or reused. Any semblance to real-world environments, factories, or processes is purely coincidental. All scenes shown in this video are digitally created and do not represent real footage. This content is produced with transparency and follows YouTube monetization guidelines.